All right, we might kick it off. It's 2 minutes past the hour, so I'm sure people will filter in as we go. So thank you everybody for joining us for Building Effective Cloud Security webinar, hosted with Sumo Logic and AWS. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Sam Thiel and I'm the Regional Director for Australia and New Zealand from Sumo Logic. And we're joined today by Phil Rodriguez, who's the head of the security team for ANZ at AWS, and George Gerchow, CISO for Sumo Logic. So this is a brief agenda of what's to come today. So again, thank you everybody for joining us. We're going to dive into AWS security services, who is Sumo Logic, the Sumo Logic SIEM, and summary close at the end. At the end, we'll also have time for Q&A. So if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A question section, and we'll wrap up at the end with any questions outstanding. We'll do our best to answer them as we go, but for all of those that we don't have the ability to answer, we'll wrap up at the end and make sure that we get to all those questions. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Phil Rodriguez and George Gerchow to introduce themselves and kick off the webinar. Thanks, guys.
Hi, everybody. My name's Phil Rodriguez. I'm based in Sydney, Australia, and I work with AWS helping our customers across Australia and New Zealand understand what it is to be secure in the cloud. Excited to talk to everybody today about our partnership with Sumo Logic and some of the customers we're working with, but I'll get to that in a moment. Over to you, George.
Great, thanks, Phil. It's a pleasure to be working with you today. So George Gerchow, CSO of Sumo Logic. I've been with Sumo Logic 5.5 years, and it's amazing what's happened throughout that journey. When I first joined Sumo 5.5 years ago, I was more talking people into the benefits of AWS and security there, and not even our own solution. And here we are, almost 6 years later, just with a great partnership with AWS. And my primary responsibility is locking down our platform, which is spread globally and with our 2,000 plus customers, and protecting their data. So super excited to be here today and looking forward from hearing from AWS. Always learn a ton from people like Phil, so I'll hand it back to him and he'll get us started.
Thanks, George. So I really like to talk about customers, and I really like to talk about customers with partners like Sumo Logic, since we share so many great customers together. And I think you'll get that theme throughout the rest of the conversation today. I just wanted to touch on these four across the bottom. We got a spread here from A to X, not quite Z. Australia Post is an important brand to everybody in Australia. And they've talked publicly around the tools, the same tools we're talking about today, and how they've used those tools to build a system to identify and remediate cloud security issues in as little as 30 seconds. NIB, the insurer, it's actually migrated in the last year, one of the first financially regulated core systems into the cloud. And through all the public conversations they've been leading, they've really helped define the pattern, which focuses on security and resiliency that other people can do that, whether they're migrating big important things like core systems or otherwise. Xero, the accountant software platform, is a great customer of AWS's and Sumo Logic's. I've been working with both of us for a very long time. And they've spoken publicly about many things that they do with both of us, whether building tools that focus on identity management at scale, to the softer things like building an organizational culture that helps them be secure in the cloud. And finally, not the only example we have, but just the last one we're going to talk about today, Zinja, the digital bank, who's really leading the way for the new generation of financial services running in the cloud. You might have seen their talk and the resulting press coverage within the last few months about how they secured their bank in the cloud. For example, getting PCI certification and meeting all the strict requirements from their different payment service providers in the cloud. All of these organizations work with AWS. All of these organizations work with Sumo Logic, and really happy that we can be working together with them and talking to you a little bit more today around what we do. We can go to the next slide. So George summarized it really nicely at the beginning. I've been at AWS for about 4 years now, and what a journey it's been, right? We're clearly seeing the conversation change to how is the cloud secure, or maybe why is the cloud secure, to a much more customer-focused conversation where people want to understand how they can build and operate securely in the cloud. We think there's some real core security benefits in doing so when done properly. And I'll touch on these a little bit more in a moment, but just briefly, when you're building on top of our platform, you're getting to inherit all of the good security technology, operations, process, and team that we've built globally in order to keep that cloud platform itself secure. The cloud itself scales very well, and this is a key benefit that we offer to security teams, big and small, is that they can scale their security operations on top of the cloud as well. We have an exceptionally high standard for data security and privacy. Won't go into a lot of detail on that today, but all of the different compliance programs we follow, hundreds of different compliance programs around the world that publicly audit and list for all of our customers, the details on thousands of different controls. Automation is another huge benefit. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. And then finally, really relevant for the conversation today, our vast network of thousands of different partners that work with AWS, especially our most important security partners, which we call our competency partners. And a great example of that is Sumo Logic, who's been in that security competency program for a really long time now. Go ahead to the next slide. So as an AWS employee, I am contractually obligated to tell you about our shared responsibility model. And it's something that's built in our contracts. It's something that defines the way that we create our services. And we hope it's something that our customers use to influence the way that they consume our services. Simply put, there's a set of responsibilities contractually that are AWS's here at the bottom of the slide. And two really straightforward examples of that are our global infrastructure and all of the hardware that we need to keep secure and available, and the core foundational set of software services, compute, storage, etc., that we use to build the services our customers consume. And these are our responsibilities. So keeping those data centers secure, building that software securely, keeping it patched, keeping it available, that's what we do. What our customers do is every time they look at consuming one of those services, they need to make good decisions. First around what kind of service they want to consume, and secondly, which kind of security configurations they want to apply to that service. So whether choosing to apply encryption or a password policy, configuring network access control in a limited way, or all of the other cloud security decisions, those are our customers' decisions. Next slide. I'm not going to go into any more detail on it today, but I did want to give you just some pointers around where you can find other information around what AWS is doing to keep our half of the shared responsibility model. Our public compliance website, just /compliance, has a listing of all of the different compliance programs we align to around the world. And in many of those cases, the public information available to those, for example, like a cover sheet with an auditor's name, data sign off, etc. And additionally, to our millions of active customers around the world, we have another platform that we call Artifact. This is available for free to any of our customers, and here you can get the full text of those compliance reports. So if you want to read our 350-page PCI DSS report or our 250-page SOC 2 report, it's all there in detail. So do check those out if you have any questions around what we're doing to keep the cloud itself secure. Next slide. And then above the line, we have a bunch of different programs. Probably our best known and the best single recommendation I would give is to follow our well-architected framework. Our well-architected framework's been in existence for many years, and it's always been focused around those 5 pillars that you can see in the middle there. Things like operational excellence or reliability, which are really important principles when deciding how to design and build your cloud applications running in the cloud. Security has always been a big important pillar. It's actually our longest pillar, and it's usually the first one we talk through with customers. And what I'll do now is just for a couple minutes is go into a little bit more detail on what we consider the principles of good security in the cloud. Next slide. Okay, so these 5 pillars across the top, from identity through incident response, are our best advice for our customers after our experience over many years in helping them run good, resilient, secure cloud solutions. And the order of these is really important from left to right. So I'm going to talk through these at a super high level here, and then we'll dive a little bit deeper into one of these categories. So identity and access management is the first and most important principle in cloud security. Why? Because the access model is different. It used to be in traditional infrastructure, you used a set of hardware and installed a set of applications and then gave other people access. But in the cloud, it's the exact opposite, right? You're getting access to an environment where you're using a set of applications to build virtualized infrastructure. So who you give this access to and how you secure it is the most important decision you're going to make in the cloud. The second category are detective controls. I'll look at this a little more in a second, but this is a real distinct benefit. And we'll look at some of the benefits around what we do with that and how Sumo Logic extends on that in just a moment. Infrastructure protection are all of the traditional layers of cloud security that you're familiar with and securing in your own organizations. Things like DDoS mitigation or web application firewalls, network firewalls, patch management, etc. And in the cloud, we've got an analogous tool for that. We just simply call it a different term. So we've got the same, except we call it Shield and WAF and security groups and inspector. So you can achieve the same control objectives, it's just with a different type of tool. The fourth category is data protection. This really means encryption. And this is why, at the start of this, we can talk about working with big regulated customers like Ozpost, financial services customers like NIB and Zinja, et cetera, because we are able to give them the assurance that they're able to keep their data safe by using our encryption services. So whether these are things like our super scalable KMS service used by many of our customers to help them manage the keys that they use in our services for us to encrypt their data, or things like Amazon Macy to be doing detection of sensitive data at scale. And the last category, and the thing we always like to talk proactively with customers at the start of their cloud journey, is to think about what they do if something should happen inside of their cloud environment. So in addition to how do you detect things, a real focus on how do you respond? Because in the cloud, it's a little bit different, right? So we offer customers a set of tools and we encourage them to build their own runbooks that are specific to how they do their cloud security operations in response. So these 5 things, from identity and access management, flowing all the way down to incident response, are our pillars around how we suggest customers think about the cloud security. What I want to do for just a moment or two is deep dive into a few categories inside of detection and kind of build up to the point where we're looking at a specific service and then looking at a specific integration with Sumo. So our most foundational logging service is called CloudTrail. I always think of the cloud as just a big virtualized bundle of API calls. The way our customers interact with our services are through API calls. The way our services interact with one another are through API calls. And these APIs are secure. They're encrypted, they're hashed, they're signed, they're logged, there's access control and authentication. And these logs we make available to all customers for all of the services in all of our regions that they operate in around the world for 90 days. And after 90 days, we just ask that customers choose which type of storage they want to use to keep those logs for as long as they want. You can imagine some customers want to keep that maybe for a year. Some customers want to keep that for a many longer period of time. Inside of CloudTrail is the information around those API calls, whether they were successful or not, who accessed them, and what type of services interacted with them. And this is a lot of information, which is why best practice is to get these CloudTrails out of the central of the individual environment and into some centralized sort of logging platform. Okay, next slide. Another great source of logging information specific to operations and also to security is our VPC flow logs. VPC is our private networking construct, and we keep a record of all of the network-based activity inside of customer private network environments. It's important to note that VPC flow logs, our customers have to turn them on. Why? Well, there can be a lot of details of the activity of traffic over time. So it's important that customers are opting in to making sure they're going to make use of these logs. And when they do so, they get a whole rich set of information shown here on the bottom. And people use it for operations. Hey, why isn't this web connection coming through? Was it initiated? Where did it come from, etc. And it also is a really rich source of security monitoring information. Again, best practice here is to get these VPC flow logs out of the individual environments like accounts where you've enabled them and into something central like a centralized logging platform. Okay, next slide. Built on top of those 2 foundational log services is a very specific security service that we have called Amazon Guard Duty. Amazon Guard Duty, simply put, is our AWS-focused cloud-based intrusion detection system. So it's looking across activity inside of your AWS environments, and it's sending you an alert when we notice something that we think is suspicious or we know is malicious. It's built on top of, and you can see this in the bottom middle, it's built on top of CloudTrail logs. It's going to look at our copy of those logs we're keeping in that environment. It's looking at VPC flow logs, and it's also looking at the logs of any DNS requests that you're making versus the standard resolver inside of the EC2 environment. And what it's doing is when it's looking at patterns, it's using some machine learning, it's looking for known bad activity, and when it detects that, it creates an alert across up to about 70 categories now, including our new alert sources for S3. And it's forwarding those alerts wherever you'd like. Again, best practice when we looked at all those things is forwarding these alerts and the raw log sources themselves into some sort of centralized logging platform. Amazon GuardDuty is a super popular service, and it's one that we definitely encourage all customers to turn on and use. Next slide. So I'm going to leave you here just with a specific pointer, and we'll share a link to this later, around an AWS quick start that we've built together with Sumo Logic that shows you how to configure all of these security services in the ideal way, has an automated template to actually build all these security services for you, and shows you how to integrate all of these with Sumo Logic. So if you're looking for a really easy first step in understanding the deep integration between AWS security services and the benefits of using Sumo Logic for all of the stuff George is about to talk to you about, take a look at this quick start, get it started inside of your own environment, and sit back and watch how all these services interact with each other. All right, that's me done for talking. I'm going to hang around for a long time and help answer any questions at the end, and I'll turn it over now to George. Awesome.
Thank you so much, Phil. Really appreciate that. Great overview. And again, you know, I always learn a ton every time I listen to someone like Phil talk. AWS has just revolutionized the way that we do security and the way that we think about it, and then we're able to focus on our core competency, which is data and the applications themselves. So let's get into the other side of the partnership. So what is it we do? So Phil kept on referring to, you know, these logs have got to go somewhere. These services have to go somewhere. And that's really where Sumo Logic comes into play. So again, if you missed it at the beginning, we were born and bred in AWS 11 years ago, multi-tenant SaaS solution, so true SaaS. And as you know, Phil went through very lightly some of their certifications, attestations, and the things they do around security. Well, we build on top of that, and that's really what the Sumo Logic service does. So when you stop and take a look at this, just incredible numbers as far as like how much we analyze when it comes to data. So if you look at that middle piece in the center, scalable proven service, 700 petabytes daily, that's insane. And by the way, I just got verification yesterday that it's up to 1,000. So stop and think about that. 1,000 petabytes of data analyzed daily across our customers. So, you know, really, again, we ride on top of the AWS model, which is multi-tenant, elastic, scalable, and then, you know, we focus on very specific use cases. But this kind of elasticity is just, and scale is massive for our customers today, besides being a turnkey proven solution, you know, that's SaaS based on top of AWS. So our customers by vertical, it goes across the board, you know, and I'll get a little bit into our security posture here in a second, but everything from FSIs to media entertainment to retail, you know, tech communications and healthcare. And this goes very deeply into the way that we amplify our security posture on top of AWS's, but a plethora of customers out there that we're very grateful for, common customers with AWS out there, you know, people like Acquia stand out very much in this space. You know, they have made a bet on AWS, made a bet on their security, and then also made a bet on Sumo Logic as well too. So again, we're very appreciative of those, as well as the customers that Phil mentioned before that are in the ANZ area, you know, folks like Xero, Australian Post, so on and so forth. So a very mature customer list as well. So let's get into the certification attestation piece. So again, this is part of the responsibilities that my team has. My team, you know, being broke out into 4 different buckets. The first one is our SOC, or Security Operations Center, which has global coverage. You know, so that's part of the reporting structure that comes into me. And again, we're very active users of Sumo Logic. We drink our own champagne, and I'll describe that a little bit later on. We have the audit and compliance team as well. And then the federal team, which cares very much about that second to last bullet point, which is FedRAMP in process. And I'm here now to also make a commitment to our Australian customers, which in 2021, we're aggressively going after IRAP. which is a federal standard in Australia. That's on our roadmap, and we're going to deliver on that in 2021. So stay tuned for that. We're going to use a lot of what we use for FedRAMP to be able to get there. And then the last piece is I'm lucky enough to have a few engineers that report back into my team who are absolutely critical when it comes to the automation SOAR piece. Phil had mentioned runbook automations on the operational side. So we very much focus on security orchestration and automation response, which I'll get into here in a second as well. So a few things. Number one, the very top piece. Phil mentioned how AWS is PCI certified. Well, all of Sumo Logic, and I mean all of it, is a CDE, so a credit card data environment. This is our crown jewels. So as you go out there and you look at different solutions, whether it's for SIEM or logs and metrics, if someone doesn't have PCI on top of AWS, this means don't ask Phil to show you what AWS has for PCI and try to pass off that way. They have to go out and get the certification and attestation on their own, which is what we've done. So if they don't have that, they don't meet our level of trust, our level of security, our level of being inspected by third-party audit committees on a yearly basis. And we're into year 5 of PCI. So that's our crown jewels. We take a lot of pride in that. It's not about being a single tenant solution that can just do PCI as one-offs. All of Sumo Logic is PCI certified. SOC 2 Type 2, same thing, 6 years, SOC 2 Type 2, so a mature program there. ISO 27001, I always congratulate people when they get ISO 27001 certified year 1. But guess what? Year 1 is telling the world what you're going to do. It's all about year 2, year 3, year 4, where you have to prove that and show continuous improvement. And then on top of that, we decided to add on the extra controls to become CSA STAR certified. I believe we were the first SaaS solution ever to achieve that. HIPAA High Tech in the US is big. This is about healthcare PHI. Or patient healthcare information. So we get attested to that. Now, there's a lot of controversy around this next one when it comes to EU Privacy Shield. Is it going to stick around? Is it not? We will always go as far as we can to give people any kind of attestation or certification from a third party when it comes to data sovereignty, meaning if you want your data to stay in Australia, it will stay in Australia. We'll find a way to get inspected. We were safe harbor until the disaster that took place in October of 2016. Then we went EU Privacy Shield. We will continue down this path. So whatever's next, if EU Privacy Shield doesn't stick around, we'll go after. And then encryption across the board. So we encrypt everything in our environment. Again, FedRAMP in process, which is a federal regulation in the US. And then we always measure everything within our environment based off of the Center for Internet Security, AWS Foundation. So again, a very mature program. We're very proud of this. It's a major differentiator for us against the competition. So what do we do when it comes around AWS security monitoring? So Phil did a great job of describing, I thought that was a wonderful analogy of this virtualized environment, that spits out logs in CloudTrail. So we bring all that together to be able to give you full stack monitoring of your environment. So securing your migrations into AWS, whether it's using patented technology we have like Log Compare, which shows you what your workload looked like before, and then after you were in AWS. This next piece to me is everything, visibility. So if you're just dipping your toe in cloud, or if you've been in cloud for a while, visibility is absolutely everything. You cannot secure and manage it if you can't see it. And so that's step one before you even take any kind of action. So we bring together all those AWS services, which I'll talk about here in a second, to be able to give you that extreme visibility and security monitoring on top of that. And then continuous compliance, so the last place you want to be is reacting to audits. I can tell you now that my team, we're going to 2 or 3 audits, at any given time. Like right now, we're going through a deep FedRAMP audit. We're starting our ISO 27001 internal audit, which is a prerequisite to the external. And so we have to have this posture of continuous compliance on top of what our friends at AWS give us, which means at any given time, you can ask me a question or look at our audit posture and we'll deliver that. So we offer that same service to our customers, again, drinking our own champagne with Sumo Logic at the center of that. So some of the real-time insights about your apps and your infrastructure. So these are pre-built, just a sample, by the way, of some of the canned applications we have that support AWS services. So whether it's S3 or AWS config or CloudTrail, or Inspector, AWS WAF, which we actually have deployed at Sumo Logic as well too. These are turnkey. So when you sign up for Sumo Logic, you'll find these out of the box. I'm going to go heavily into guard duty down the line, but just know that all of these exist. Extreme value across the board. So when I even just stop and think about AWS config and what that's brought to the table, so it is actually the building of almost a CMDB within AWS. So this is going to show me what changes have taken place, the history of those changes, the deltas of those changes. So lots of great information there. And when you start combining it with some of these other services, you get very deep analysis about what's happening within your AWS environment and its security posture overall. So what do? So we are truly a cloud SIEM. So again, born and bred in AWS, that's number one. Multi-tenant, elastic, number two, with that kind of scalability. And then we take those use cases around very quickly being able to detect threats within your environment. And again, this is AWS centric, but we also do this on premise, so if you have on-premise workloads that hopefully you eventually move out to the cloud, we collect that data as well too. So we bring together that holistic picture to be able to detect threats very, very quickly. Once we detect those threats, well, we investigate what's actually taken place, trying to drive to a post-mortem. So incident response, which Phil brought up as well too, is huge in the cloud and the way it works. And I can tell you now, since I've been at Sumo Logic, I'm knocking at wood, we've had, a certain amount of incidents, and our partners of AWS have been fantastic about doing their part when it came to the shared responsibility model. So open communications via Slack, being able to detect, was it something that happened at the infrastructure level, what our responsibility was, and working together to satisfy our customers. So again, it's win-win-win. A win for us, win for AWS, and then a win for our customer base as well too. But that response piece is big. And then finally, where do you sit as far as compliance? What benchmarks are you following? Are you able to prove to auditors that you're in a compliant state, not only when the audit comes, but before the audit and then post-audit, to again, achieve that status of continuous compliance. So full stack monitoring, what does that mean? So again, some of the things that Phil talked about, I talked about when it comes to EC2 or S3 or CloudTrail or CloudWatch, and especially guard duty, being able to see the entire stack once it's deployed. And for me, I'm a huge fan of VPC flow logs. Why? Well, one of the things that we offer to our customers is free threat intelligence through CrowdStrike. And that works mainly at a VPC flow logs level. So VPC flow logs, in my mind, what it gives you is packet size, port protocol being used, IP source, IP destination, packet rejects. And when you combine that IP information with threat feeds from someone like CrowdStrike, you're able to detect IOCs proactively. So indicators of compromise, let's say it's a blacklisted IP out there that you need to investigate that's come into your environment. So that combination of what's happening with VPC flow logs with threat feeds from CrowdStrike that again is free to all Sumo customers with built-in apps is absolutely massive. And the way that I always like to explain VPC flow logs to new folks out there, it's pretty much flow logs. So if you stop and take a look at what happened on premise, and when you would actually look at NetFlow, this is now extending that into an AWS service to give you that same kind of visibility at a network IP level within the AWS. So how do we do that? So again, now that we have this modern day SaaS, it's turnkey, low friction, extreme time to value. It's all about credentials, and then you're up and running, pumping data in. So that is really the advantage here. There's really no rollout, no deployment, no nothing like that needs to take place. Again, it's all turnkey, frictionless. And when you take a look at the current state of the world today, this is huge. Like who really has the time or the staff to be able to roll out infrastructure and manage that infrastructure? It kind of cracks me up, and again, no offense to anyone, when a company is saying they're cloud first, but then security people approach me, or I hear them on seminars, webinars like this saying, well, I guess I need to buy more infrastructure to manage or secure the cloud. No, adopt the cloud, adopt SaaS, embrace it. See what your role is to be able to really make things frictionless when you roll out new solutions. The next piece is big too, when it comes to incident response, like I mentioned before. So being able to have API calls back into source solutions, help desk tools like Jira, for example, is absolutely key. So having something that's built off of a modern day microservices type application is massive. And then finally, taking a look at things like admin behavior monitoring, what developers are doing, which again, very development friendly environment. For us, one of my biggest partners out there is the SRE team, or site reliability engineers, which by the way, they're responsible for 1/3 of the CIA triad, which is availability. So, but we still want to make sure that we have that kind of visibility, the integrated threat intelligence I talked about before with CrowdStrike, and then network traffic monitoring with VPC flow logs. And then finally, we're all about logs. So making sure that we have an established secure data lake with tiered data analytics, and our pricing that way as well too. So one of the things that's very unique about Sumo Logic is if you're collecting data more from a compliance perspective, let's say it's something like PCI 13 months, or here in the US, HIPAA, which can be 7 years, or SOX, sometimes 7 years, we're not going to charge you more off of that data that you may not be searching or querying on. We charge you based off of what it is that you're actually searching, looking at, querying, and using on a daily basis. That's where the value comes with infrequent and frequent data models, which Sam at any given time who's on this call is more than happy to talk to you about. And it's not about putting it like in cold storage or anything like that. It's about what you're actually searching for and what you're using. So a lot more coming around about that. And then, also as well too, like I mentioned before, the 400 pre-built apps and dashboards and alerts that we offer out of the box for our customers. And then even though we do a lot of AI and machine learning capabilities with our outlier detection, we still give you the capability to do what you want to do, which is being able to have real-time insights based off of rules and correlation that you built. Now, this is a slippery slope though, because a lot of times you're only as good as the rules you built. So what about the unknowns and the things that the machines are discovering? So it's a very nice hybrid mix of artificial intelligence with machine learning, with giving you the capability to build out those rules within your SOC. So again, getting a little bit deeper into detecting threats within the infrastructure. So having these integrated dashboards down that allow you to not only detect, investigate, but respond and get better. This really comes from the anomaly detection that I was talking about before, and the integrated threat intelligence that we offer to our customers. So when you start putting in that real-time information, which is critical in the cloud, now that these workloads are off-premise, you want things to work real time. You don't want to download CSV files every 24 hours, put them into a traditional on-premise SIEM to be able to do analysis later. It has to be in real time. That's the way the AWS works. That's the way we work. And that's the way of the future, is get information in real time. So then that way you can make that information actionable. Benchmarking with global intelligence service. So this is a major differentiator for Sumo Logic. So this is sort of like when Phil was talking about before, being able to detect a lot of information about what best practices are for customers with guard duty. Well, we've taken this a step further with our solution as well too. Because we are multi-tenant, we're able to see metadata about our customers. And this is an opt-in program to where we can actually tell you now, leveraging great solutions like guard duty, how are you doing against your peers? So there's no information shared between you. So Pepsi and Coke can be sitting right next to each other, but what they can see is, how is everyone else doing compared to me? Am I getting a rare threat within AWS that nobody else is getting? Am I in the medium? Am I above or below what's happening with everyone else when it comes to vulnerabilities and threats? I mean, there's been times where actually my SOC has been able to see, wow, someone's getting Bitcoin mined right now. We can't see a lot of the details as far as like what the data is, but because of the metadata and because of the amount of vulnerabilities, we can tell. So we've had to place a proactive phone call, which has been very weird to our customers, to say, look, something's going on within your environment. We found all these different threats taking place, all this different traffic. We believe you're getting Bitcoin mined right now off of the guard duty data that we have coming from AWS and our own solution as well too. So again, This is massive, very differentiated. If we weren't multi-tenant, we'd never be able to get this kind of information. In my mind, it's almost like the next gen MSSP, which is being able to compare how customers are doing against each other. And by the way, my SOC is part of this. We compare ourselves to you or anyone that's opted in. We want to know how we're doing. And the biggest thing that we look for is a rare threat. Did we get something that no one else has gotten today, tomorrow, or in the future? So it's metadata. I'm like very capable and more than welcome conversations about how we can't really look at data because it's encrypted across the environment, but that metadata tells us a lot, so more to come. But think about this global intelligence service as something that very much differentiates Sumo Logic from any other solution out there. So again, why would you look at us? You know, so I mentioned before hybrid IT. So it's not just about cloud, as much of cloud fans as we are. We're still going to collect information from your on-premise workload. And then this next piece is really big for me, which is cross-functional collaboration. For the longest time, we didn't adopt the word SIEM at Sumo Logic. And one of the reasons why is because SIEM is so security oriented. But in reality, all this data, whether it's from development, IT operations, or security, sits in one solution as the single source of truth. It's just a different lens that you're looking at it for your use case. And I'll give you a great example of why this is effective. Before I got into software way back in my engineering days, whenever we would find a vulnerability or a threat, we would have our logging solution and we'd go to, let's say, security folks who had a SIEM solution, and we would start the finger pointing. Hey, we found this, we found that our environment's not optimized and we're having performance problems. Security people would say, well, it's not our problem because we're looking at our logging solution. And then development people would be like, oh, we have a syslog solution and we're using something completely different for metrics. And then next thing you know, no one's collaborating, no one's talking, there's finger pointing all over the place because they're different logging solutions. So being able to bring all this information into one location that satisfies multiple use cases is key moving forward. Let's stop using multiple solutions for logging, bring it all into one location and collaborate. Yes, we're still a SIEM. Yes, we still detect threats. Yes, we allow you to write rules and we have a lot of machine learning that helps you out from a security perspective, but we have the same thing for operations, the same exact thing for development as well too, and that's the wave of the future. The cloud scale and the economics I talked about before, so one of the beauties of if there is anything positive about COVID, for me, it was at least my son was able to entertain himself playing Fortnite. And Epic Games, a big customer of ours, whenever they have a new release, that can go off the charts. That can be 70 terabytes in a day, 100 terabytes in a day. Whenever people like Marshmello or other folks did their concerts there, we'd see a huge spike in data. And to us, it was a bump in the road. We did not have to provision anything for that customer. We were just able to adopt with that kind of scale. And then, finally, the 200 plus supported apps that are out of the box, turnkey, and available to you day one. So with that, I'd like to just reiterate a few things. So Phil's going to push out a few links in the chat for folks to see, the great work that AWS is doing. Again, being able to pick up on where Sumo Logic fits into their architecture and to their partner plan, which we tremendously appreciate our partnership with AWS. Also, you can try our Cloud SIEM for free. Again, it's just about credentials. We offer a free service. We're SaaS based, so to us, it's easy to be able to support you, and for you, it's just a matter of giving us credentials and some data sources. And then we also have some work from home free analytics solutions as well, where we've tied into being able to monitor and detect things work from home. One of the things I'm very proud of as well too is our Zoom app, which is able to show you, do you have passwords set? Do people have pre-meeting rooms? Lots of different things around Zoom, which was pretty controversial, but I pump up Zoom all the day. They're a very easy to use, effective app. But do your security on top of it, and we help you to be able to detect that. And then finally, being able to contact Sumo Logic and our great sales team and folks out there for any support moving forward in the future. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back off to Sam, and hopefully you have some questions out there. Phil and I are on standby in the batter's box, cricket box, whatever way you want to put it, to be able to answer any of your questions.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Phil. Very, very interesting as always. And I think if there's anything that I'd stress to everybody who's joined this webinar, that if you do want more information, or if you just want to be connected to Phil and George, I won't put words into either of their mouths, but I kind of will. Look, I can speak hand on heart that, George always makes himself very, very available to customers because, to talk about best practices and learnings from a Sumo Logic perspective, because we have been, all in from an AWS perspective and leveraging that technology for so long. George and his team in particular have a lot of experience. So please, reach out to Sumo Logic or AWS, and we can broker those meetings, and I'm sure that a lot of the people on the call would get value out of them. We don't actually have any Q&A, so we might give it a couple of minutes. So if there's anything that you want to know from either Phil or George, we'll give it a couple of minutes for everybody to put it into the Q&A section. And if there are no questions, we may wrap it up. So we'll give that a couple of minutes. So have a think. If there's anything you want to answer now, or if you want to do it offline, that's also fine. Yeah, so feel free to throw in the Q&A box should you have anything that's pressing. Otherwise, we'll give it a couple of minutes and wrap.
Great. And Sam, I'll just say, while we're waiting for some questions to come in or not, it is a journey, and no matter what stage you're at, continued education is good, and tapping into resources like Phil, myself, we didn't get it perfect out of the box. I can tell you that, it took a while. It took a while to make a transition. I did security at VMware, speaking of virtualized environments, before coming to Sumo Logic. And I purposely went to a company that was leaning into cloud so I could be at the bleeding edge of security. And we didn't have all the answers. We didn't really know how to get visibility at the time. And so it took a while to get there, and we have a lot of lessons learned along the way. And so, don't be shy. If you have any questions or anything else related to product, not related to product, more than happy to share. I know Phil feels the same way, but no matter what stage you're at in the journey, it's a journey. And, nothing's perfect out there. And so the more you can collaborate with your peers, with people like us, the better off we all are.
Thanks, George. Pardon me, we've had a couple of questions come in. I'll go from top to bottom. We had one question around Cloud SIEM and whether it's available in Australia. So I can answer that partially. So we do have, I guess the easiest way to think about Sumo Logic is we have a continuous intelligence platform, which is available for consumption out of a Sydney instance. Cloud SIEM is available. Cloud SIEM is a slightly more security focused product that lays over the top of that, and that's coming to region in the next probably 6 months. So it can be consumed, but the reality is, what I tell the Sumo Logic team, it really comes down to what use case you're trying to solve for, because within our continuous intelligence platform, there are security-based use cases that we can solve for without needing to go to a full-blown cloud SIEM. So I would encourage you to engage with your account team there, and so they can better understand exactly what your requirement was. Is that a fair summation, George, based on?
It really is, Sam. So Sumo Logic as a core product has always brought a lot of security functionality, compliance functionality as well too. Our SOC got built off of it. Now we're just adding an extra layer on top of it. And what is that extra layer? So let's be very transparent about what that is. In November of 2019, we purchased a company that was also cloud-centric in AWS called Jask. Jask had a SOC analyst point of view. It looks like Halo when you're in it, which I like, because what it does is it cuts through a lot of noise, so it reduces a lot of the alert fatigue that you can possibly have with a native SIEM. It really gets into what signals and insights are needed to be able to triage events and get to that postmortem I was talking about. So we've been working very hard on integrating the two platforms. Their leadership came from ArcSight, ours did as well too. So, and we knew each other, so that's a plus as well. And things are coming along nicely. We're customer zero. Sumo is internally, as well as some other major customers we have out there. But native Sumo brings a lot to the table. So when I was talking about the CrowdStrike integration, that's native Sumo. That's been around for a good 2 to 3 years. These apps that we've been talking about when it comes to VPC flow logs, which by the way, I was the PM on that, AWS config, ELB, those are all native Sumo. And so we bring both to the table. This is just adding on extra feature and functionality that takes us to the next level even more when it comes to things like threat investigation, workflow, and then even a lot of EUBA type capability on top of what you already get with native Sumo logic.
Great. Yeah, so it's, and look, I think, to George's point, on our core platform, we do have a number of organizations within Australia and New Zealand leveraging the core platform across their security operations team. So it does come down to use case, but we're happy to explore that further. The next one, we need some help understanding the AWS Sumo Logic integration options with something like Stacks, STAX. Due to STAX, customers do not have access to the root account. I'm going to throw that to the both of you because it means nothing to me.
Yeah, hi, it's Phil Rodriguez. I can provide a little visibility. I won't give a complete answer because I just don't know it. So Stacks is a solution by a local consultancy partner of ours that provides its customers with some management and visibility options. If that person wants to follow up with me, just philrod at Amazon. We can dive in that a little bit more in detail specific to Stacks. In general, George, I think the question we could answer in general is, AWS customers access AWS through a couple different models, right? Sometimes they're accessing us directly. Sometimes they're going through a partner but owning their own accounts. Sometimes they're going through a partner but the partner is owning their accounts. In the scenario where they're going through a partner in like an intermediate SaaS model, or the partner outright owns the accounts, what's the ability for to get the benefits of Sumo Logic when they're not in direct control of the account?
So my opinion is no matter who's in control of the account, it doesn't matter if it's a partner, it doesn't matter if it's you yourself, you get the same exact benefits, which is extreme visibility into what's taking place within your AWS environment. So having that logging type capability and then that native integration into AWS services, that's the first area of value. The second area of value is once you have that information, you're able to take action. So again, more of like that SOAR type capability and integration to be able to do remediation. For us internally, our SOAR is built 100% off of Lambda, Phil. So everything that we remediate within our environment is driven by a Lambda function. And in fairness, some Slack bots as well too, but they usually call Lambda functions. And then the third area of value, again, regardless, partner, you manage it yourself, is really that compliance posture. So with everything that's taken place with detecting a threat, remediation of that threat, how did it affect your compliance posture and your regulatory requirements, no matter where in the world you're at? That's really the last piece of value, because you're able to go back and verify that your compliance posture is still the same, or that you need to take action to make sure that it's in the correct spot to achieve, again, that euphoric state of continuous compliance, which is exactly where you want to be.
Great, thanks. And to the person who asked about the Stacks question, Phil has just kindly put his email address into the chat. So please refer to that and send Phil an email offline. Thanks for that, George and Phil. And finally, just in the interest of time, I might just throw to this last question. What are certain considerations for AWS multi-account deployments? Segregation of each customer data was the question.
I can answer from the AWS perspective. I think there's a Sumo angle on that as well. So briefly on AWS, our core technology investment is really at that strong customer isolation, which essentially is all built on top of our hypervisor. If you're interested in the topic at all, just look at any of our public talks around the hypervisor technology, whether it's Zen, Nitro, or some of the newer platforms like Firecracker. When a customer is operating inside of their own account, there's no accessibility or data shared between other accounts at all. Obviously, some customers are quite large and they want to get that own strong isolation within their own environment, maybe between different apps, different stages, different lines of business. So they might use multiple accounts. And this is a very common pattern now, customers with dozens of accounts. When they do that, they just need to specifically configure those accounts to share information through things like shared IAM policies, et cetera. And that's pretty straightforward to do. But again, unless a customer is explicitly sharing that data, it won't leave or have any permissions to any other accounts. George, we hear that question sometimes, maybe in the context of Sumo. What's Sumo doing across multiple customers to keep them isolated?
Almost the exact same thing, Phil. And even another use case for multiple accounts is MSSPs, right? When they're managing several different customers as well. But same thing. So we give people a 64-bit unique identifier when we roll out their organization, all segregated, all segmented as well too. This is something that we get inspected on constantly, because while we tout multi-tenancy, I think a lot of single tenant type solutions point the finger and say, oh my God, there's gonna be data leakage and everything else, which there could if you didn't do your part. Again, this is why, Phil, I appreciated you showing the shared responsibility model. So for us, with that unique tagging taking place, and then some of the security solutions and things that we've also done on top of that to make sure that all data, all customer accounts are segregated and segmented, has really done the trick for us. So we have 3,000 plus customers, nowhere near AWS, but that's a lot of folks out there with a lot of critical data that we're able to demonstrate that we do that separation.
Right. Yeah, I think they added to that question saying, asking as a SaaS provider MSP, want to aggregate security information for multiple customer deployments. To add a little bit of color to that.
Yeah, I think that was probably directed more towards me, since obviously we're the SaaS-based solution. So look, I mean, one thing that we're always going to be able to do is be able to see metadata. So information that's unique to the service that you're getting from us and from the customer, but that doesn't mean data. That's two different things. So for example, if you're passing PII or IP, all of that's encrypted within Sumo Logic. So we have a full-blown encryption dual mechanism, which is how we get through PCI, which I could go through in boring detail. That's like watching paint dry, unless you're a security nerd. But that's really, at the core foundation of what we do, which is the 64-bit unique identifier that I talked about before. Combined with encryption and key rotation. So all keys within Sumo Logic for our customers are rotated every 24 hours, and then a new set of keys are given. So we're looking at 760 unique keys on each customer's key ring at the end of the year. And so that kind of key rotation, that kind of encryption is also another layered approach on top of the data segmentation and 64-bit unique identifier I was describing before.
Great. Thank you, George and Phil. If there are no more questions, we might wrap it up there. Really appreciate everybody's time. Thank you for attending. I hope you received value from the session, and I've been told that you'll get a recording of this session to look at further. So if there are no other questions, really appreciate everybody's time. Phil and George especially, thank you very much. Always appreciate doing events like this with key values such as AWS. And George, thank you for staying up. I know it's late and rainy over in Denver, so appreciate you staying up again.
No worries. Thank you, Sam and Phil. Pleasure working with you. Again, always learn a ton from our friends at AWS, and thank you for your partnership.
Yeah, thanks, George, and everybody for attending very much. Had a great time.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.